to organize more tests of the card readers in each geopolitical zone. And the ICT department, in conjunction with the voter registry and electoral operations departments, have been mandated to immediately draw up plans for this. And our decision is to now use this opportunity and identify polling units and do a mock test of the card readers, particularly what we call stress tests, in each of the 6 geopolitical zones. I should add here that already we have conducted some specialized tests with partners in Nigeria and in Texas, USA, and the card reader has passed in all the 13 test categories conducted in terms of its durability and versatility. C, to organize additional training for ad hoc staff, especially those who are going to handle the card readers. And our Electoral Institute has already been mandated, and they have already provided a methodology and a budget for doing this. D, to intensify voter education and public enlightenment on election day procedures. And E, resident electoral commissioners to intensify arrangements for election day transportation in consultation with the National Union of Road Transport Workers in the context of an MOU which we have already signed with the union. In summary, Your Excellency and distinguished senators, it can be noted that Inec has forged ahead with the preparations for the conduct of the 2015 general elections as rescheduled for March 28th and April 11th. We believe that the period of extension has offered us an opportunity to further perfect the electoral process for the delivery of free, fair, credible, and peaceful elections to the satisfaction of the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. We regret any inconveniences these new developments might have caused many stakeholders, and we hope that in spite of this, all stakeholders will continue to join hands with the Commission to turn this disappointment into a blessing for our country. With regards to the card readers, the use of the permanent voters cards, PVC, and the card reader, CR, for the 2015 general elections, we believe are in accord with the provisions of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. They were introduced also pursuant to the powers granted to the Commission by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended. Inec is empowered by Section 16, subsection 4 of the Electoral Act 24 as amended to, and I quote, wherever it considers it necessary, replace all or any voters' cards for the time being held by voters, end of quote. The decision of the Commission to replace temporary voters' cards with permanent voters' cards is in accordance with the provisions of the Electoral Act as amended. An election is said to be validly conducted if it meets certain basic requirements, including accreditation of voters. An election cannot be said to be properly conducted if the steps provided in Section 49 of the Electoral Act 2010 as amended are not complied with. This section requires that any person intending to vote shall present himself with his voter's card to a presiding officer who shall satisfy himself or herself that the person is on the register of voters before issuing such a person a ballot paper. The use of the card reader for the purpose of accreditation of voters is one of the innovations introduced by the Commission to improve the credibility of the electoral process, in particular the accreditation process. It is not offensive to the Electoral Act or to the Constitution. It adds value to the desire of Nigerians to have a credible election in line with international best practice. Whereas Section 52 of the Electoral Act as amended prohibits the use of electronic voting, the card reader is not a voting machine and is not used for voting. It is merely an electronic device introduced to improve the integrity of the accreditation process. It should be remembered that Section 78 and Section 118 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended grant the Independent National Electoral Commission power to register voters and conduct elections in Nigeria. Now, having set the legal context for the introduction of the PVC and the card readers in the 2015 electoral process, we shall now proceed to clarify what the card reader does and demonstrate how it does it. Using the card readers has enormous advantages. First, once the card reader is configured, it can only read permanent voters' cards issued by Inec at the polling unit that has been configured. Second, it reads the embedded chip in the card, not the barcode. Third, it enables authentication of the identity of the voter by matching his or her fingerprints with that stored on the chip of the card. Fourth, it keeps a tally of all cards read and all cards verified or authenticated with all their details, including the time when this was done. Fifth, this information can be sent to a central server using an SMS. Six, the stored information on the server would enable Inec to audit results from polling units, as well as do a range of statistical analysis of the demographics of voting, something Inec has never been able to do effectively. 7, the registration area or ward collation officer can use this information to audit polling unit result sheets and to determine whether accreditation figures have been altered, a common feature of electoral fraud in our jurisdiction. Using the card readers has two main challenges. What if a card reader fails? What if a person is verified, but his fingerprint cannot be authenticated? We have worked together with all registered political parties and agreed on what to do if any of these has arisen. In the highly unlikely event that a card reader fails, we have enough spares to deploy before the end of the accreditation at 1 p.m. and then adjust the time to gain for lost time where or if a card reader has failed. If we cannot replace before the end of accreditation, then the election in that particular voting point would be postponed to the following day when a new card reader will be provided for the election. And we agreed with political parties to do this because if you say if a card reader fails, then revert to manual, we are worried that then everywhere it will revert to manual because there are many people who don't want the card reader to be used. If a voter's permanent voter's card has been read and his or her details have been verified, but his fingerprints cannot be authenticated, or he or she has no fingers, An incidence form would be written by the presiding officer of the voting point, and the voter would then be accredited. Party agents and observers will be there to testify to this. In the next few weeks, the Commission hopes to utilize, as I mentioned earlier on, the 6 weeks period of extension to organize more extensive public enlightenment and testing of the card readers. But we've already done a number of tests. We have tested these card readers in a pilot scheme here in the FCT. We have tested it on a admittedly minor scale in some of the states. We have sent national commissioners to supervise the distribution of the voters' cards, and they went with technical officers and the card readers, and wherever they went, as people were collecting their cards, they were also checking to see whether the cards could be read. In general, we are satisfied with the results. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, I can call the Director ICT and the technical staff to test the use of the card reader. This is how the card reader looks like. It is a simple device. Basically, when somebody comes to a polling unit, he will give his card. You will test your card. Yes. So, sir. As I have said, our technical people are here to demonstrate how the card reader works. All that is done, when a voter comes into a polling unit, he or she are required first to present their cards. That's a requirement of the Electoral Act. The assistant presiding officer in charge of the card reader will take the card and just put it under like this. And once they do that, if it is a card issued by Inec, then the details will pop up here on this screen. It will show all the details on the card, not what is on the face of the card, because what is on the face of the card is also replicated on a chip that is embedded in this card. Some people did not seem to understand the difference between a contactless chip and a contact card. Most of our ATM cards are contact cards. You can see the chip outside. This one, you cannot see the chip because it is embedded inside. And the card reader does not read the surface or the barcode on the back. It reads the chip inside of the card. So if the card cannot be read, in all likelihood, 99%, it is a clone card, a card not issued by Inec. So that is the first thing that this card does. It helps us to verify whether that card has been issued by Inec. The second thing it does, after it has been verified that yes, this is a card issued by Inec, then the person bringing the card will be required to put his thumb here, like this. And then the operator will touch a button that will now scan the card and compare the fingerprint with what is stored on the card. And there is a microphone, and you will hear it when we start. To the vicinity, people around, it will announce whether verified, whether verification passed, or whether verification failed. Your Excellency, Your Excellency, distinguished senators, the card reader is a simple device. It operates on a battery. When fully charged, the battery lasts 12 hours. In addition to each battery in this card, we also have redundancies in case it becomes necessary to replace the battery. In practice, through our testing, we have discovered that actually the battery does not run down until the card reader is operational. It goes on safe mode when not operational, which means actually it can last longer than the 12 hours. So we now have what is called the back end, where we have a server. This device also carries a SIM card. And the purpose of that SIM card is to help us at the end of accreditation with a press of a button to send all the details of this accreditation into a server. And as I have explained, the purpose of that is to help us do a lot of analysis. For example, immediately after election, people keep asking us, how many women voted? How many men voted? How many of those who voted are young people, less than 30? How many 18-year-olds have voted? We were never able in the history of the commission to do that. But with this, because of the information stored here, we will be able to do a nationwide analysis and to provide that information. But most importantly, for the integrity of the accreditation process, we have seen in practice in 2011 and since 2011, one area where electoral fraud takes place is the area of changing accreditation figures. And we believe that this device will help us to audit. If accreditation figures have been altered, we will be able to audit it and to prove whether it has been altered or not. So that's all I want to say. I will now, with your permission, allow our technical people to come and do demonstration or provide further clarifications. Thank you very much.
Process about the card reader, and two, technical specification of the card reader, and if possible, the level of deployment of the card readers as of today. First, the process is very clear. The Honorable Chairman has explained it. The card reader is likened to an equipment that is a combination of reading of data and also like a GSM phone. So in the case, this card reader composed of two things. One, reading the information on the PVC and also being able to transmit this data to a back end. It is at this back end that further information in terms of analysis, auditing are done. Let me also make some little comments in terms of the specifications. This is a system that is not licensed in terms of using operating licensing. That costs a lot. We use Android. Was designed in terms of the process by the Commission, was also built in terms of factory doing hardware in China, and also tested in terms of whether it works in the United States of America. I would also like to say this. The temperature that it can work is between minus 15 degrees Celsius to almost 65 degrees Celsius. So we did it in such a way that in most of the places in the country, the card reader will survive. In terms of storage, you can store the card reader minus 20 degrees Celsius to up to 80 degrees Celsius in terms of storage. However, because 80 degrees Celsius may affect its processing, that is why during election we always insist that the reading of the card shall be done without cubicles. In our cubicles, there are cubicles that will be in the field in such a way that the sun would not be on it. We also did something in terms of settings. In terms of settings, We have also done it in such a way that if for a particular period of election, like we're supposed to have election on 14th, we now move it to March 28th. We have to do a setting in terms of the date. We also do a setting in terms of the time for accreditation. So within the day of the election, there are within times you can accredit. If you come in after that particular time, it will not accredit you. So these are the processes I needed to explain. I have my staff here where I will beg the distinguished Senate President, we have about 10 of our staff with card readers who can come down, and any person with the card, we can test it. And after testing, we can take questions, sir. Thank you very much.
One or two persons, one at a time, please. Yerima.
Every card reader is configured to a particular polling unit. So any person that is here with a card, we have to take time to configure that card to a particular polling unit before we do the testing. So within that, which is different when we are going for election, during election, we configure to polling unit before taking it to the field.
Set out in court. Because if, for instance, in a particular ward or booth, they refuse to take this procedure, you are still bound to announce the result. What will happen is that you will be challenged in court. So the question now is, if, for instance, in a particular place, they refuse to use the card reader or it's not used in a manner you prescribe, will you announce the result and allow the court to determine the rest? Now, the other one, sir, is you said that they are going to press a button because it works like a GSM and to record in your server. Suppose the vote is taking place where there's no network. Will it work? And then lastly, the issue of the internally displaced person. What is their plan to ensure that those who are internally displaced will vote in accordance with the Electoral Act? Because as you are aware, you can only vote where you are registered. Because there are a number of our colleagues who are contesting elections who cannot even go to their constituencies to ensure that those people, the electors, will vote for them. How do you guarantee that those constituencies will have senators and members of the House respectively? Because if they don't vote, they won't produce members and they're entitled to have representatives at these hallowed chambers. Those are my questions.
First question. First of all, I must also place on record our appreciation. Inec is appreciative of all the support and the encouragement that we have got from the Senate and from the House of Representatives, and it has motivated us and encouraged us to keep on doing our best for our country. So we really are truly appreciative of that. Secondly, with regards to the question you asked about outstanding production of PVCs, I don't lie, and I will acknowledge that as I speak with you, there are about 800 to 1 million cards yet to be produced. But over 66 million of the 68 million registered voters, the cards have been produced. They are already in the states for collection. And we've been saying the problem is not production, the problem is collection. People are not coming out to collect cards for one reason or the other. We've done our best to decentralize. So in a sense, the postponement is a blessing in disguise, because at least all those cards now will be produced and distributed before the 28th of March. But our argument had been, what is the acceptable level of collection of cards for an election to take place? You know, and we've always argued, we did election in Ekiti, we did election in Osun State. In none of those places had the collection rate gone to 70%. You know, as I speak with you, as I said today, we are approaching 76% of collection nationwide. But at least now there are 4 more weeks within which people will be collecting. And so we are doing our best to address. We have said consistently, it is never perfect. Although anytime I say it's not perfect, there is a headline, Jega says it's not perfect. You know, but the fact of the matter is it's never perfect, you know, but we do our best, and our best is showing results. And if people can be patient, we will keep on improving the process. About how do we guarantee a uniform procedure for use of the card reader? You know, our staff are trained to use this card reader. Security officials are expected to be at the polling units. And obviously, it's an offense for anybody not to use this card reader. And if it is not used, just like it's like disruption of the electoral process. And we've always had procedures about how to handle electoral processes that are willfully and deliberately disrupted. So really, we do not envisage. We know that there are daredevils out there. Somebody will try in one polling unit or so to disrupt it and to ensure that it is not used. You know, but we do not envisage that our staff will succumb and the security agencies will succumb and all the party agents and all the observers at a polling unit will succumb and allow that to happen. So if it happens at all, because you can't rule it out, it will be very, very isolated. And if it is isolated, we deal with it as an electoral offense and willful, deliberate effort to undermine the process. What if the network fails? As I have said, the card reader itself on its hard drive, it saves the information. But we will need the information to get to us as quickly as is possible. So wherever there are service, at the close of accreditation, we want them to quickly send a text message to get to the server. If they cannot do it because it's a remote area, there is no service, they bring these card readers to the collation center at the ward level. There is likely to be service at the collation center in the ward level if there is no service at the polling unit, and they can send it from there. So there are levels. In majority of the places, given the networks we are using, and we are using all the major networks, there will be service and we will get that information. In some cases, we may get it late, maybe when they come to the collation center at the ward level, that's when they can send it. You know, so that is really the arrangement. We know that in this country there is no 100% also GSM coverage. But it is there, it is saved. With a press of the button, you can send it to our database. Then, with regards to IDPs, sir, we've done our best to cater for the needs of the IDPs. In general, Nigerians want all IDPs to be catered for. And we have explained that it is virtually impossible for us to cater for all IDPs. So we have concentrated in terms of trying to cater for IDPs in particular in the three northeast states, which have massive displacements of people internally, and where also, because of that massive displacement, there is likely to be challenges in returning results if the IDPs are not allowed opportunity to vote. And we looked carefully at the Electoral Act. Initially, we had hesitations as to whether the Electoral Act would allow us to cater for the needs of the IDPs. And after taking a careful look at the Electoral Act and getting competent legal advice, it is clear that there are provisions in the Electoral Act which will give us the power to create voting places for internally displaced persons and to allow them to collect their cards there and to be able to vote in those designated centers. So that's what we have done with regards to Maiduguri, Adamawa, and Yobe. Now in Maiduguri, the challenges are more, because in Maiduguri, where only a small fraction of the total number of local governments can be said to be safe for the conduct of election, obviously the challenges there are such that we are only doing our best to return as many places as is humanly possible. Because in some places, in some constituencies, particularly constituencies where the Boko Haram insurgency is still in control, there is nothing that we can do to make a return. Unless, of course, there are sufficient votes in some of the internally displaced locations for that to happen. So we are managing a very, very difficult situation, and we are doing our best under very difficult circumstances. Our point of view is that it's better to do something than to do nothing at all. So, and we feel confident that what we are trying to do will go some way in minimizing the challenges if all the IDPs are not allowed to vote. We set up a task force in Inec, and we drew up a plan, and we had stakeholder meeting at the national level, and also at the individual state levels. And basically our proposal for IDP voting has been endorsed. And we are planning and preparing to proceed with it. We hope and pray that what the service chief said would come to pass, which is that by the end of these 6 weeks, a substantial area in the northeast would have been returned to normalcy, and many of the internally displaced people may have gone back to their places. If that happens, it makes it even much, much easier for us to be able to arrange voting normally.